So I'm going to say things that are completely different from everyone else that's come before me. So I'm here representing Sage Bionetworks. We're a nonprofit biomedical research organization. We spun out of Merck in 2009 with a group of best-in-class researchers who try to connect biological information to health outcomes. And these are the kind of questions that we try to answer. These are the sorts of questions that used to be really hard to answer that are becoming easier to answer. And what I'm going to try to do is connect this to publishing and to access, and try to show you why open access is so important for us to get what we want done. I do a lot of other things, I wear a lot of other hats, but my main job is as the Chief Policy Officer for this organization. So this is a question we asked about a year and a half ago, which is how accurately can we predict, purely from data, whether or not a woman is likely to relapse after successful cancer treatment? And despite having some of the world's best scientists in our group, part of the precept of our organization is that we can answer this question more accurately if we engage a larger audience. So we ran a challenge using data collected directly from patients in Sweden and the UK, using existing public data as a training set, with cycles donated by Google, using our collaboration platform that I'll show you, and connecting to the publication system by saying that the winner of our challenge, the most accurate model, gets grandfathered into Science Translational Medicine in lieu of peer review. The challenge would count as the peer review. We had over 200 teams enter from over 40 countries, and we required code sharing, which meant that the leaderboard was changing on a regular basis, and if someone came up with a good model, anyone else could grab their code and put it into their model. And as a result of this, the accuracy of the statistical model jumped 3 orders of magnitude in 9 days. And all of this, the only incentive, there's no cash incentive, the only incentive was a publication in a high impact factor famous journal. And the winning result was impressive enough that we didn't just get an article, we got the covers. This is from April. The winning model is 76% accurate, which is unbelievably improved from the existing. And the winner is not a biologist. The winner was actually the team that created the MPEG codex at Columbia, whose ideas and theories had not been particularly welcomed by their biological colleagues. And they actually had 3 publications in 2013, one in PLOS Computational Biology, the cover of Science Translational Medicine, and a preprint in Archive. And the preprint is most interesting to me because it shows what can happen when the article is thought of not as the end point, but as a Polaroid of what's actually happening in research. So the publication is an essential carrot, which is why it's important to us, but it's actually the least significant piece of the scientific method that's going on when you start to expose this. So let's look at what we can do with the archive version of the paper. Figure 2, let's look at the scatter plots. What you really want to do is say, for that given plot, I want to know the software code that generated it and the data that was fed into that software code. And indeed, that's what we provide. You click on this, and all of this is open source software. All of this is available for free because we're a nonprofit. We sort of would like everyone to steal our stuff. And what's interesting is you say, when you click on that scatter plot, you actually get a little directed graph that says, there's the code that creates the scattered plot. There's the R code, and there's the data. So we can zoom in on the R code. We actually pull up the software code itself, because again, you had to make visible all of your software. From that, we say we'd like to actually look at the data on which that R code ran. And from that, we see that it was actually multiple data sets that were normalized. We see the names of the people who did the normalization and the names of the people who curated the data. So the actual publication in this is just a point in time. And what we really want to be able to do is follow our nose all the way back through the research process and see who did what at what point. The success of this led a large cancer project, the Cancer Genome Atlas, to say, you know what, we'd like to have that sort of internal provenance tracking to use inside our project. This is a classic big science project out of the NIH. They want to develop the unique genotypes of multiple common types of cancer. Now, this is a project that has plenty of money to run their own IT, and they decided to put their code and their data into our platform because they wanted these sorts of collaborative tracking features. If you want to work on data across space and time with people that aren't in your lab, that aren't on your lab's circadian rhythm, you need these kind of features. And what was really interesting is that once we put that data into the system, here's what happened within 9 months. So 68 core projects developed on top of that data within 9 months, right? Almost 250 researchers, 28 different institutions, more than 1,000 data sets creating more than 1,700 results, and 18 papers in press, right? 9 months. There's 36 more that have been accepted since we made these slides. This is an incredibly powerful method to do science. And the connection of all this to open access is that if we wanted to scale this, and everyone that worked on our platform had to ask for permission in order to upload their paper into the system and connect it to the provenance graphs of the work, we'd be dead. If we think about the PDF as the proper form of the article, we can't do this. Because the article is like the crust on the surface of the earth, right? It feels incredibly thick and important when that's where we're working, but when you start to expose the scientific method that leads to that result, you see how thin the crust really is, and how important it is to render all of the parts of an article clickable. And either the people doing the work can do that annotation, or we can expect that to be an incredibly expensive service provided by publishers. Right? This isn't cheap to do. I'm not suggesting it is. But the people who have the motivation to do it are the researchers who get those little micro-attributions and micro-credits. And if at every point they have to ask for permission to add links to the article, or permission to make a transformation of the article's format, or permission to copy it into an environment like ours, the system won't scale. And so I'm not up here because I want to talk about open access as an advocate, although I've done that in my past, right? I'm up here because if we want this sort of thing to be at the core of data-driven scientific research, right? The ability to copy the article into another place in the right format and add information to it and integrate it into a data-centric workflow, real OA is the only answer. We've been able to do this using the articles that we've got available because one of them was in PLOS and one of them is in archive. But if we wanted to take this to scale in cancer research, in climate research, in social sciences, in political research, any of the places where data and statistics are beginning to drive decision-making, to justify the choices that we make, it's only going to work if the authors and the researchers have the rights to do this themselves. Because it's already going to be expensive enough to simply store copies of the articles. It's already going to be expensive enough to keep the best available version. If we have to put the pressure on the publishers and the societies to do all of this dense integration into the workflow, it's not going to happen. There's not enough money to do simply the archiving. There's not going to be enough money to do this kind of dense integration. We have to allow the researchers to do this themselves. And we have to allow this to be integrated into the pedagogy. So I'll stop there because I know we have probably quite a few questions for the group. And again, thank you, Alicia, for the chance to talk.
Are you going to come in to this? Yeah, okay, quickly. Any questions? Are the questions already come forward? Could you give your name, please, and so on?
Ben Wagner, University of Buffalo. I have not seen anything about the if and when there'll be public comment on the agency policies, and if there's really if that comment will actually change the policies. That's for the NSF or agency.
So there. There was a period of public comment in the spring. It was announced in the Federal Register, and this one's better.
Thank you.
It's shorter. So there was a period of public comment that took place in the spring that elicited what the thought was. Because we did not have draft plans available, of course, you couldn't look at the draft plans. The plans will be published in final form, as I said, and communication will continue to be a feature, and we will want to hear what works, what doesn't, what have we forgotten about, and how does this implement.
Okay. Anybody else? That's okay? Okay. Anybody upstairs? Okay. Lady at the back.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from the American Chemical Society. I have a question for each of you, so I'm going to go quickly through them. With respect to SHARE, ARL I noticed is you represent ARL. You mentioned why higher education wants to be involved in this process. Can you speak to how SHARE is integrating the sort of senior administrative positions of major university provosts and deans and that sort of thing? So that was that question. My question for NSF is, have you aligned one way or the other in terms of share or chorus, or is that still sort of in debate? Are you allowed to share that information? With respect to chorus, what sort of solutions are being made to handle the data aspect of this? Obviously, chorus has some very clear proposals for publication, but what about data? That's not going to go away. And lastly, with respect to, researchers should be given the rights to do this kind of open research. What do you do when the researchers don't want to do that? Sorry, a lot of questions. Thanks for the time.
Can you remember all those, Alicia?
I can go. Mine's gonna
Judy,
take
do you
like
want to go very quickly on
Sure.
share?
Yeah, sure. So from SHARE, yes, mentioned higher education because SHARE from the get-go was a partnership among ARL, AAU, and APLU, which is the connection to presidents and provosts and senior higher education leadership, who are actively involved in the steering group and our working group. So this is a library higher education partnership, from the outset.
Do you want to just
So
go in
I
order?
mean, the quick answer on our end is that we work with researchers that want to do this, and our goal is to demonstrate that this is empirically a better way to do science. And as we have done that, we've gone from people not believing that it works, and our internal team has published over 70 papers in 36 months, to pulling in these challenges, to pulling in large-scale NIH projects, because we're starting to demonstrate that you generate more impact when you work this way. But we work with people that want to work with us. We don't have the time, money, or funding to advertise to convince people, other than by doing better science faster.
As you do. As I said, I can't divulge. Our draft is currently, the plan itself is pre-decisional, and I can't discuss details of it. I can tell you, and my colleagues will agree. We provided early comments on the SHARE proposal, and we provided early comments on the chorus proposal, and we comment when people ask us.
And it's not because Amy would not like to share with us the details, but really she cannot. She's made that very clear in advance today.
Sorry, I missed that part.
So thank you for the question about data. Basically, Chorus views that as very much of a nascent area, and so there aren't things to reuse currently, but so we're definitely in the listening and collaboration side of things, so we are trying to talk to places like DataCite and Dryad and all of those kind of groups, as well as leveraging ORCID and seeing how that all ties together. So our infrastructure, we believe, actually will work and can scale out to handle data as it grows and as it starts to find its own feet.
I'd add to that many publishers, of course, are already linking to data in the publications themselves. So when those are surfaced through Chorus, of course, they will come with those links.
Okay, next question.
Bob Persing, University of Pennsylvania. I have two questions which are actually the flip side of each other. Howard, you talked about how Chorus has been spun off as a separate company, Core Incorporated, and it has a number of signatories listed on its website. I'm wondering how its governance is going to work. Judy, the flip side, with SHARE, its program started by these three membership organizations. Is the intent that the three of them will continue to run it long term, or will it be spun out as a separate entity at some point? And if so, will it be a membership entity?
So I'll handle the governance thing. So Core Inc. is incorporated as a not-for-profit, and it will be going for 501c3 status. In its bylaws, which are currently in draft form, we have built it in so that the majority must be not-for-profit players. That's the first thing to say. Second thing to say is we would love for the agencies to become a member of the board, but it's become clear to us that agencies would prefer to be advisors. So they are an advisory group instead, not actually members of the board. But that seems to work very well for us because we want to play in the same way that the agencies can play. So that hopefully answers your question.
Yep.
Judy?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I think what my presentation tried to explain why we put this effort into this and why we're building this. And I think the intention is over time that this is meant to be inclusive. Beyond the research occurs beyond the membership of ARL, AAU, and APLU, and so needs to be anything that we build needs to be governed accordingly in an accordingly inclusive manner. So we're just not at governance yet. We are building it, and it will, that will evolve. But no, it's not intended to be sort of kept within these associations and those constituencies.
Thank
Okay,
you.
just time for one more question. There you are. You're at the front.
Hi, I'm Steve Van Tylen from Carnegie Mellon University Libraries. This is a very short mic. So I think it's interesting that it seems like very quickly we've found ourselves in an environment where we have two choices. And it's kind of uncomfortable for people who don't agree with all of the parts of each of those choices. And I wonder if you could, any of you could speak to how we got to where we are and what other options we might have.
If I can sort of insert myself, so I'm not on the panel while you all think, in putting this session together, it didn't feel like we had stark choices to make or fierce competition to follow. We have an emerging landscape and ecosystem, which will probably vary between different disciplines and over time. And we have some really creative, vibrant suggestions for how that can be made to work. A sunny synergy, perhaps, rather than stark choices to be made.
Well, thank you so much, all of you. I think we'll just stop there because we have to...